What is going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit regarding the latest game releases. And today we are talking about a very, very unique game. A game that probably, once my playthrough is complete on YouTube, I'm actually filming this before it is going to go down in infamy, but also in high regard as well, depending on who you are. A game that pushes the boundaries and limits of what can be put into a video game. And a game that kind of showed up a lot of other game studios by showing that maybe the reason that a certain style of game is falling out of favor with Western audiences in particular has absolutely nothing to do with the gameplay, but has to do with the subject matter. The game that we're talking about today was massively delayed multiple times. People didn't know if it was ever going to come out. It was in development hell. Even the two creators of the game kind of came out at multiple E3s and were like, wow, we're exhausted working on this game. But the game that came out of all that blood, sweat, and tears is such a masterpiece that I'm perfectly fine with the fact that it came out so delayed, and I hope that people who normally wouldn't play this style of game will now check it out. The game that we're talking about today is South Park: The Stick of Truth. When it was first announced that a serious RPG-style game, turn-based combat, by the way, was going to come out with in the South Park universe, a lot of people said, well, what is this going to be? A downloadable title? I don't get it. And, you know, you would see the art of this game or screenshots of the game in gaming magazines, and it looks like it's actually a scene from South Park. So you were like, wow, I wonder what the hell this is really going to be when it comes out. There were many delays, many problems with the game, and finally it was delayed until March of this year. And again, a lot of people say, well, March is an overcrowded month. It's a month when there's a lot of big heavy hitters coming out. Every year it's like that. And how's this game going to do? Well, I'm here to say that South Park: The Stick of Truth is one of the most enjoyable games that I have played, not only in recent memory, but since I actually started doing any kind of footage for the internet. And I don't say that lightly. That's not something that I would just throw out there. It's that damn good. However, I have to sharply interject that statement and say the reason that I feel that I really enjoyed it as much as I did is because I am a fan of South Park. So let me give this the frame of reference. I saw all the first several seasons of South Park. I went to the movies and saw the South Park movie in theaters when it was brand new and it was playing. I have not really followed up and watched any of South Park in the last several years. However, I understand the characters, I know the show, I know everything about it, and so playing this game and being thrown into an interactive universe of the town of South Park was just mind-blowing and mind-bending how well of a job they did with it. So, let me give you the premise of the game first, and then we'll talk about how the gameplay ties in. The premise of the game is this: you are the new kid. You and your family have just moved into the neighborhood, and just like all the other kids, you live in your house with your family, and you step out of your house that first day after moving in, and you're trying to make new friends. And it just so happens you run into some of the kids from South Park who seem to be playing this fantasy-style, almost Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones-esque role-playing game. Now, here's the thing. It's like LARPing, only with a South Park flair. So, they know that magic doesn't really exist, okay? So, for example, if you're going to be a mage and you're going to do an electricity spell, no, electricity doesn't shoot out of your hands. There are no real magical powers in South Park. It's a realistic place. So what do? You take a bucket of water, you throw it on your enemy, you pull out a car battery and shock the water, and that's how you do your electricity spell. If you want to do a fire spell, you pull a Roman candle out, light it, and burn the fucking opponent's face off. Now, just think about that. It's obviously very brutal. It's adult-style humor. It's what you would expect from South Park, alright? And that's what they do with this game. Instead of saying, oh, people have mystical powers, they show kind of almost realistic ways that you could have those kind of powers in an RPG-style game in a real world. And it's so clever, the many different ways that they actually pull this off. Now, once you meet up with many of the children of South Park, you embark on a quest for the Stick of Truth. It's a stick that supposedly, whoever holds this stick has universal powers, And that's pretty much the premise of the game. I'm not going to spoil the plot because this plot is excellent. In fact, there's literally 2 to 3 key points in the plot where things flip on their head. During the course of the game, you will meet up with all the mainstream characters of the South Park universe, and almost, I would say, every periphery character. I'm serious. I'm talking about, you know, from Big Gay Al and Mr. Slave to all the people from the school, like Mr. Garrison and Mr. Mackey, to the police officers, you know, those people that you see in the show all the time, to just the normal citizens that you see, from all the parents of the kids are involved. Everyone's in the game. Now, not everyone has a huge role, but some people have bigger roles than others. And without spoiling, this game has pretty much every possible fucking thing you could think of. Elves, LARPing, knights, aliens, monsters, mutations, zombies, Nazis, Nazi zombies, which is actually a running joke of the game. It's nuts, the amount of stuff that they managed to throw into this game. And that whole style of humor from Matt and Trey, who are the creators of South Park and who are involved with this game and pretty much wrote the plot of the game, their style of humor is imbued in the game. You know how during South Park they love to make references to things that are going on in the news and pop culture and kind of parody them? This game is a parody of video games. You're going to see so many references to things like Skyrim, where instead of doing a dragon shout, you fart out of your ass, and that's how you do the dragon shout. You're going to see references to all kinds of games in this that some people will pick up on them and some won't. But it's such a cool parody of that, and the art style is amazing. The game looks like a 12 to 15 hour episode of South Park. That's what the game literally looks like, okay? So, now that we've talked a little bit about the design of the game, the plot of the game, what about the gameplay? The gameplay is like a classic JRPG, and I mean that. It's turn-based. The way that the game works is that you will have an ally with you at all times, and you'll have the ability, once you find more kids from the show, to swap in and out of having them as your allies. Each character ally has unique abilities. Maybe one's a melee fighter, maybe one has elemental abilities, maybe one's a mage, okay? You yourself, at the beginning of the game, will also pick a class, whether it's the warrior, the mage, the thief, or the Jew. That's right, Jew is actually a class in this game, which is a big running joke in South Park. I picked mage, and like I said, I explained to you how a lot of the elemental magic is explained away, because it's not really, it's you using practical means to do things and hurt your enemies. The way the game works is it's turn-based. On your first turn, or on every turn, you have two things you get to do. You can either use an item or a special ability that is catered specially towards your character. For you, it is use an item and summons. Summons are characters from the South Park universe who, through doing side quests, you can unlock them to come and actually help you once a day. And the game, I believe, is consisted of 4 days, to come and defeat the enemies. And it's some of the most crazy, irreverent shit you'll ever see. Like, Mr. Slave jumps with his anus open and engulfs the enemy. Mr. Slave shoves the enemy up his asshole and it instantly kills them. And then if there's any other enemies on the field, they're so terrified by what they saw, they run away and you instantly win the fight. That's how crazy this fucking game is, okay? For other characters that aren't you, New Kid, that's your name, New Kid, they have other unique abilities. For example, Kyle has the ability to buff your party. Cartman has the ability to throw a maxi pad, that's right, it's not a used one, don't worry, at an enemy. He calls it Magic Missile, and when it hits them in the face, they basically get grossed out and start vomiting uncontrollably, which is actually one of the status effects of this game. So, yeah, that's your first turn. Then you get a second turn immediately where you get to choose either an attack, a magic attack, which are your controlled fart attacks, or a special ability that's catered towards your character, and those are going to be dependent on what class you pick. So you get to use an item and an attack, or you know, some other ability. Then your partner uses an item and an attack or some other ability, or one of those buffs that I told you about. Then it's the opponent's turn to attack. And the other cool thing about this is that it is a little bit more action-based than other turn-based RPGs. When the enemy goes to attack you, if you push the button at the right time, you'll defend against the attack and take way less damage and possibly prevent a ailing status effect. So, Similar to other JRPGs, you're going to have Fire, which lets you burn, which is damage over time. Gross Out, which does damage over time, but also paralyzes the enemy. Stun, which obviously stuns the enemy, they can't move. There's different stats, like Freezing, which makes you slow, things like that. Ultimately, you beat the crap out of the opponent, they die, you get experience points at the end of the fight, and you move on. There are no random encounters. What actually happens is as you're walking through this open world map of South Park, which, by the way, it's pretty much the first time ever that there's been a definitive map of South Park, and just that in itself is an accomplishment where you can walk from one end of South Park to the other and see all the landmarks that you've seen on the TV show, which is awesome. You finally get some positioning and geometric kind of logistical, I'm sorry, not geometric, geographic idea of where everything is placed within the town. You can go anywhere you want, however there are certain areas that are blocked off until you unlock certain abilities to get into them. Okay? And the game has a ton of side content and hidden items. So, at one point in the game, you may have an ability to teleport. Now all of a sudden you've opened up all new areas of the game where you can get side items. You can add friends to Facebook, which I know sounds really silly, but this game has a lot of realistic references, like Taco Bell, Facebook, iPhone, all those things are in the game. And Facebook friends, the more friends you have, allow you to actually earn perks. The more friends you have, you get perks. For example, take less damage in a certain situation, do more damage to an enemy that's on fire, stuff like that. You get to select those perks depending on how many people you befriend within the town, do favors for, and then eventually they become your friend and go on your Facebook page. In addition to that, obviously experience points, you get them for winning fights, winning boss fights, and winning critical quests and completing side quests, all of which give you experience and level you up. When you level up, you get the ability to level up one of your unique abilities. So for me being a mage, I had a fire spell, an ice spell, a lightning spell, and like an ultimate fire spell that hit everything. And you can level those up every time you gain a level. When you gain a level, you also gain HP and PP, which is your ability meter, and also mana boosts. So you get the ability to do more stuff as well. But besides all that, the game just has a loot system, a complex loot system. Every single time you kill an enemy, their body will lay there dead. You can loot them and get items. And whether it's healing items, excuse me, clothing, weapons, and accessories, or junk. Junk is the generic shit that basically you find in every single RPG that's just there to sell, or is worthless loot that you don't need that you sell. And in this game, they literally just call it junk. And it's all kinds of iconic items from the game, like the Terrence and Phillip action figures, or I believe at one point there's a USB thumb drive that contains the data for like the ultimate sword from the episode of South Park that was about World of Warcraft. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in the game that's inside references to South Park that you may miss out on if you're not keeping your eyes open, alright? So the game is long. The game is about 15 hours long if you do the side content. Some people say, oh, the game's short. The reason they're saying that is because they didn't do any of the side missions that unlock during the course of the game, which mostly involve the periphery cast of characters of South Park, and you can pretty much rush through the game because the game scales the enemy to your level. So you can beat the game at a low level without ever grinding. You don't need to grind to beat the game, but that's not fun because you didn't do half of the content, and half of the fun of the game is wandering around and talking to the citizens, trying to get as many friends as possible on your Facebook page, trying to unlock as much as you can because you want to get all this immersion of South Park. Now, the one thing that I need to warn everyone about, this game is one of the grossest, most sexual, but funny games I've ever played in my life. In fact, I will go on a limb and say it is the funniest game I've ever played in my life because they push the borders of what you can do in a video game to the absolute limit, okay? I'm not going to spoil, but there are multiple sexual scenes, funny things regarding that, disgusting things that happen with fecal matter and anuses, and that's it. The shock value of the game is actually one of the biggest portions of the game, and if I were to tell you what's in the game, I would spoil it. And if you're playing it the first time, you'll spoil it for yourself and you'll say, oh fuck, okay? But let me put it this way. One particular video of my playthrough, one boss fight, was so ridiculous that I had to pause the game. I laughed for about 3 to 4 minutes straight on stream and in the video. It's live on YouTube right now. And I actually had to name the video. It's the funniest fucking gaming moment I've ever seen. Because I couldn't believe what I was seeing and what happened. and I almost pissed and shit myself. I'm not kidding. Right here on this spot on the couch. Luckily, I restrained myself and was able to unpause the game and eventually continue on. But I couldn't believe what was in this game. But that's what you expect from, I believe their name's Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I believe that's correct. That's what you expect from these guys. They've been around for so long. The show's been on for 15 years. They do whatever the fuck they want without limits. And that's what the game's kind of about. Push the limit further. Push it even further. Even if you get grossed out, even if it's sexual, just keep going for the sake of humor. And they do an amazing job. Now, what I need to say next is kind of a very critical point. All of that stuff being said, if you don't know South Park, if you don't like South Park, and if you don't watch South Park, you're probably not going to understand a lot of the shit in the game, the vast majority of the stuff in the game, and you might not like it. And that's the thing. Really, what the point I want to make with this review is this. For years now, it's been like 3-4 years, everyone's been saying, oh, JRPGs are dead, JRPGs are archaic, JRPGs don't work, they're repetitive and boring combat, and the battle systems, turn-based battles, don't work anymore, people like more action-based stuff. And then you play this game and you realize something. It wasn't the gameplay that's been stale and ruining JRPGs as of late. It's the plot, it's the characters, it's the universes that they take place in. Tell me this, why does every JRPG have to be anime? Can anyone explain that to me? Every JRPG that comes out, they have the big googly eyes and the ridiculous cartoony bodies. Why do they all have to be that way? You know what I mean? Even Final Fantasy, which these days tries to be more realistic, is still, it's like a live-action anime. Look how ridiculously overdramatic and overblown Lightning Returns was and why everyone hates the fucking game. The plot is shit. It's convoluted. The characters are boring. The main character is like a fucking a piece of cardboard, how boring she is with her personality, because she fucking has no personality. Why would you want to play that game? Can someone answer this? If you don't like the universe that the game takes place in, it doesn't matter what kind of fucking gameplay it is, why would you want to play the game? And this is where JRPGs have missed the mark in the past several years. If you do the same fucking formula over and over and over, it's not always going to work. It's going to get stale. And sure, in the 1990s, maybe we liked that anime style shit. People have grown out of it, and let's face it, the market is oversaturated. It's not like back then, at least especially with Western audiences. There's tons and tons of manga and anime and Japanese culture style stuff now. You don't need to sit down and play a 40-hour-long, grinding, boring JRPG to experience that shit anymore. So why would you? And that's the point. What South Park has proven with the Stick of Truth is that the gameplay of JRPGs still holds up. But if you have an entertaining subject matter, the game will be entertaining. And so many people are now buying this game. So many people are talking about it this week that I can't believe they pushed the limits of what they did in this game to the point where people are, I gotta play it. I hate JRPGs, but I gotta play it. And people are buying it and loving it. So if that's not the testament to the fact that it's the actual stories, the characters, and that's the reason why people don't like JRPGs anymore, I don't know what is. So I think what this game could potentially do, and I mean this when I say it, is open the floodgates for any of these third-party universes that want to be licensed, that never have had a game that really fleshed out the universe for the first time, the interactions of the characters, the geography of the area. I could see a Simpsons game just like this. I could see so many Family Guy game just like this. I could see so many games coming out of this that it's nuts. And again, it proves that anything, if you do it well and the subject matter is interesting and has a fan base that likes it, you could do this. Will it happen? I don't know, but I could see it opening the floodgates. All right. So, in conclusion, South Park: The Stick of Truth is not without its faults. I do want to say this. Number one, there are some technical problems. There are a few times in the game when game bugs happen, you get stuck in a dialogue option or something and the game won't progress. A few times my game crashed. Alright? And now, it wasn't too bad because the good news about the game is that any time that you teleport or fast travel, it automatically saves for you. And those are considered checkpoints. So any point when you're playing this game, if you want to make sure your game's saved, use fast travel, you immediately, boom, have a save point in the game. But the checkpoints are good and frequent. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, the game crashed. Well, usually it's fine. You can just resume from right where you were. It's not like a typical old school JRPG where, oh fuck, I didn't save for 3 hours. Well, guess what? You lost your whole gameplay. It's not like that. In addition to that, there is a lot of side content, absolutely. But I was a little disappointed that there was like no real, at least I'm wrong, and I could be wrong here, but there was no definitive post-game content that a lot of these RPGs have. What happens after you beat the game is that it just goes open world again, and you're free to wander throughout the town of South Park and finish up any side missions that maybe you didn't do and get more people on your friends list. But at that point, what's the point? One other major gripe I have with the game is the level cap. The level cap is level 15, and after doing as much side content as I could complete and getting to near the end of the game, there were basically two arcs that were going on that I was maxed out. I was already maxed out. So really near the end of the game, if you can avoid the enemies, you might as well do so, because you're not getting anything out of it because you already have maxed out your experience and you're not going to get anything out of the combat anymore. So that was a little annoying to me, that why am I maxed out, you know, without even grinding. I didn't grind at all in this game. That's another important thing to know. I didn't grind at all. It was just me walking through the town. Why was it that I was maxed out by the end of the game, earlier than the end of the game? And then the last thing is that it is on the easier side. I really feel that they did this on purpose, because they knew that most people who bought the game are fans of South Park and not necessarily fans of JRPGs. So it is on the easier side, with the exception of a few key boss fights that are optional. And I don't want to spoil those for you because they're really neat and direct tie-ins to the South Park show. But there were two in particular boss fights that were very challenging, and the one time that I did die during my gameplay of South Park The Stick of Truth was during one of those boss fights when I said, shit, alright, I really have to think about the mechanics of a JRPG in order to win this fight. I did, and I won it on my second attempt. But that does not hurt the game. There will be times when you'll be challenged and you may have to revive allies that are dying or whatever. It's you know, it's definitely going to be an entertaining experience for you, regardless of the fact of if it's too easy when it comes to the combat. So, South Park The Stick of Truth, an amazing game. A game, I never thought a game like this would be made. Because so many times you see these third-party licenses be tossed at video games, and they're not very good. In this case, because Matt and Trey were involved with the project from start to finish, the game is fucking amazing. If you're a fan of South Park, this game is not a must-rent, it's a must-buy. You want to own this, because to have interactivity with all of the characters over the past 15 years in an interactive video game, to see some of the ridiculousness, the over-the-top sexual and just gross-out humor that's in the game, you've got to fucking play South Park The Stick of Truth. But it comes with a big but. If you're not a fan of South Park, this is probably a skip. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you're not a fan of South Park, you're going to miss out on almost all the references in the game. You're going to say, why is there a dude who shoves things up his ass? Why is there a scene with this that's nudity? I don't get it. You know, if you don't like that raunchy style of humor and haven't been watching and following along South Park, you're not going to get it. You're not going to understand it, and you might even be offended by it. Which I'm sure people who don't watch South Park hear what's on South Park and get offended all the time. So, unfortunately, for non-fans of South Park, you're probably not going to like the game. So if you're interested in the game but you don't watch South Park, I recommend go watch the movie, go watch the first couple seasons. You'll get a flair for what the show's about, then play the game, and you're going to love it, alright? So here's the deal. I have to give this game two completely separate scores. One for people who are fans of South Park, and one for people who know nothing of South Park. And that's really going to be the fairest way to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, for people who are not fans of South Park, for people who will not get the references, maybe offended by the humor and the really pushing to the limit kind of comedy that they've got in this game, the game at best is probably, and the reason I'm going to explain in a second, probably a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. And the reason it's so low is because in terms of an RPG, a JRPG, this one is only about 12 to 15 hours long if you do all the side content. There are tons of RPGs coming out these days that are 40 plus hours if you do everything. This one doesn't have that much, and in fact, when I beat the game, the people who were on the live stream were kind of like, oh, that's it? We love this game. We want more. We hope there's DLCs. We hope that there's sequels. We hope that there's everything. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, I don't think there will be, because Matt and Trey were so burnt out. They publicly literally admitted that after working on this game for years, they're burnt out and they really aren't ready to tackle another one. So, that being said, if you are a fan of South Park, this game, and this is my official score for it because I am a fan of South Park, is a 9.5. Ladies and gentlemen, this game that I had no clue what it was going to be is definitively going to be a Game of the Year contender this year. There's no way that you could play this game and watch it and be a fan of South Park and not say that this is one of the funniest fucking things you've ever seen in your life, and it wasn't massively entertaining. From start to finish, whether it was the early stages or the middle of the game when the plot flips, whether I was doing side content, whether I was looking for just items and secrets willy-nilly, whether I was wandering in the forest, whether I was on a farm, whether I was... I'm not going to spoil because I almost spoiled a big part of the game. I could not believe how good this game was. And again, this game puts to shame JRPG developers who cannot make a game that appeals to Western audiences because it proves, stop making shit about these cartoony anime fucking characters with overdramatic dialogue and way too much of it. You can make entertaining games, but you need to learn how to fucking write. And these guys, Matt and Trey, know how to write. That's why they have a successful TV show for 15 years, a successful movie, a successful musical on Broadway that's one of the best musicals ever made, supposedly, if you listen to the critics, and now a monstrously successful hit video game. They're fucking geniuses. I love what these guys put out. They hit it on all cylinders. South Park: The Stick of Truth, 9.5 out of 10. If you're a South Park fan, you must buy this game because it's fucking awesome. Alrighty then, that's it for the Hateful Truth video game review of South Park: The Stick of Truth. I hope you found it informative. I hope that it was maximum truth and minimum bullshit. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Hateful Truth. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everybody. I'll see you guys later.